Hereby call to order the Roseville City Council meeting for Monday, May 5th, 2025. Mr. Trudgeon, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Schroeder.
Here.
Councilmember Groff.
Here.
Councilmember Bauer.
Here.
Councilmember Strawn.
Here.
Mayor Rowe.
Here. And with us at the dais, by way of introduction, we have our City Attorney, Rachel Tierney, who's on my right at the end, and Pat Trudgeon, our City Manager, is on my left at the other end of the dais. We also have a number of staff and others who will participate in the meeting, and we'll make those introductions as the meeting progresses. I do want to remind folks, if you have a cell phone, to silence it or otherwise assure that it doesn't disrupt the meeting this evening. We do have an extra copy of the meeting materials in the back of the room on the table underneath the big clock for members of the public if you need to refer to that. That is for everyone to share, though, so you have to be willing to do that. But we do have extra copies of the agenda also available for individual use. With that bit of housekeeping, we'll ask folks to stand if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on our agenda this evening is approval of tonight's agenda, and as always, I'll start by checking with Mr. Trudgeon. Are there any changes from a staff perspective to the agenda this evening?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Item 7B, which was to consider request to perform an abatement at 795 Hope Avenue, can be removed. The property owner has come in compliance with the city code and we no longer need to take any action.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. We'll make a note of that. Are there any items that council members would like to change on the agenda or items that council members might like to remove from the consent agenda for separate consideration? Does not appear to be the case. We'll do a quick double check with members of the public here this evening. Is anyone here from the public to speak or ask a question on an item in section 10 of tonight's agenda, which is known as our consent agenda? These items are normally taken up as a single motion with limited opportunity for input. Mostly they're administrative in nature and hopefully non-controversial, but we always do want to check at the start of each meeting to make sure if somebody is here for one of those items that we make a note of that and we take up the item earlier in the meeting. Is there anyone here this evening for an item in section 10 of tonight's agenda? Does not appear to be the case. With that, then, a motion to approve the agenda with the exception of item 7B, which has been removed from the business items.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Groff. Discussion on that motion. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. We have our agenda for this evening. Next on our agenda is our first opportunity for public comment during the meeting this evening. We will have opportunities for public comment generally as items come up on the agenda, but we also do start each meeting with a chance for folks to speak to the community or the council about items either related to city business that aren't on tonight's agenda or items of interest to people in the community. Is there anyone here this evening to speak about an item not on tonight's agenda during general public comment? Does not appear to be the case then. With that, then we'll move right into the rest of our meeting here. First up, we have under recognitions and donations, a series of proclamations. The first proclamation has to do with Peace Officers Memorial Day and National Police Week. Once again, I'll read the proclamation as per our normal standard, and then a motion to approve from the council would be in order. The proclamation reads as follows. Whereas the Congress and President of the United States have designated the week in which May 15th occurs as National Police Week, and May 15th itself as National Peace Officers Memorial Day, and whereas the Roseville Police Department plays an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of all members of the community, and whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their law enforcement agency, and that members of our law enforcement agency recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. And whereas the men and women of the Roseville Police Department unceasingly provide this vital public service, now therefore be resolved that the City of Roseville hereby declare the week of May 11th to May 17th, 2025 to be National Police Week in the City of Roseville, as well as May 15th as National Peace Officers Memorial Day, and be it further resolved that the City of Roseville calls upon all citizens to join in commemorating law enforcement officers past and present who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to their communities and have established for themselves an enviable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all citizens, and be it further resolved to observe May 15th again as National Peace Officer Memorial Day in honor of law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community, which includes Roseville Officer Howard Johnson and Officer Bruce Russell, or who have become disabled in the performance of their duty, and let us recognize and pay respect to the survivors of those fallen heroes.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Schroeder to approve that proclamation. Discussion on the motion. Councilmember Groff is the maker of the motion.
Just a thank you to the police force in Roseville and all the good work you do. I hear wonderful things from the residents, and I know you don't always probably hear those things, but they're out there, and people really appreciate your work.
Right, Councilmember Schroeder.
And I want to echo the same. Thank you all for all your service you do. And I too hear a lot from the residents, and you make my job and our job so much easier because you do such a wonderful job in the community. And when I go out there, and I have not gotten a complaint about you at all, and that, again, that just makes our job easier. And I just want you to know how much we do appreciate all you do. Thank you.
Right, other discussion on the motion? Councilmember Strong.
Is it possible to have our officers acknowledged for the people who may be watching this?
Certainly, maybe we have them come on up and stand in front here, get on camera, just what they wanted to do tonight.
See what happens when you
This will be a lesson never to come to the
You're here.
Yeah.
Maybe there's someone to take a photo.
You got it. Thank you.
I recently sent a note to Chief Scheider and Deputy Chief Adams, just thanking you for the many amazing things that you have accomplished recently. So thank you for being present to hear that.
I was especially proud of the discipline of the council members not to stand up and hog.
Mr. Mayor.
All right, we still do have the motion before us to adopt this proclamation. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That proclamation is approved. Thank you again to everyone who serves our community and has served over the years, and also to their families and support networks. That then brings us to another recognition of service of a different type. This proclamation is for Poppy Days, an annual event in Roseville, and the proclamation reads as follows. Whereas after the First World War, inspired by the opening lines of John McCrae's wartime poem In Flanders Fields, and championed by international humanitarian workers Moina Michael of the United States and Madame Guerin of France, the poppy was adopted in many countries to commemorate the sacrifices of those who have been killed in war. And whereas the United States Veterans of Foreign Wars in 1922 officially designated the poppy as a symbol of remembrance and conducted their first Poppy Day drive that year, and in 1924 the VFW registered the Buddy Poppy as its official commemorative poppy. And whereas the VFW Buddy Poppies are assembled by disabled and needy veterans, and the proceeds of the use of the Buddy Poppies as a fundraising campaign are used exclusively for the benefit of disabled and needy veterans and the widows and orphans of deceased veterans. And whereas the basic purpose of the annual distribution of Buddy Poppies by the Veterans of Foreign Wars is eloquently reflected in the desire to honor the dead by helping the living. And whereas each year, members of the Roseville Anderson Nelson VFW Post 7555 distribute poppies at local sites the weekend before Memorial Day to raise awareness about the service of veterans and the importance of Memorial Day. Now, therefore, be resolved, the City of Roseville hereby declare May 16th, 17th, and 18th of 2025 to be Poppy Days in Roseville for the distribution of these symbols of appreciation for the sacrifices of our honored dead, and further urges the citizens of this community to recognize the merits of this cause by contributing generously to the support through donations for Buddy Poppies on those days, and be it further resolved that the city urges all patriotic citizens to wear a buddy poppy as a mute evidence of our gratitude to the men and women of this country who have risked their lives in defense of the freedoms which we continue to enjoy as Americans.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Bauer. Discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That proclamation is approved. And then finally, the third proclamation this evening is in relation to National Public Works Week, and it reads as follows. Whereas public works professionals build and maintain infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to the resilient communities and to public health, high quality of life, and the well-being of the people of Roseville. And whereas these infrastructures, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public work professionals at all levels of government and in the private sector, who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, as well as public buildings and other structures and facilities that are essential for our citizens. And whereas Roseville's 34 public works employees work around the clock and whose responsibilities include 123 miles of city streets, 162 miles of water mains, 273 miles of sanitary and storm sewer pipe, and 5,833 associated manholes, and nearly 100 miles of pathways, as well as 333 vehicles and equipment of various types in the city. And whereas it is in the public interest for citizens and civic leaders to gain knowledge and maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of the public works and public works programs of the city of Roseville by signing up for construction updates, watching presentations made to the Public Works, Environment, and Transportation Commission, and participating in engagement opportunities when input is sought. And whereas 2025 marks the 65th annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association, now therefore be resolved, the City of Roseville hereby declares May 18th through 24, 2025 as National Public Works Week in the City of Roseville.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Strawn, seconded by Councilmember Schroeder. Discussion on that motion?
I'd just like to mention my appreciation for Mr. Fryhammer and Ms. Lowry's response to citizens when they have questions. They're thorough, they really get to the heart of the matter and tend to be very timely. So I appreciate that, and I bet this is one of the most unsung parts of our history or our our employee base, and so I think it's nice to honor those things that we only notice when they're not done. So thank you.
All right, and if we can get all the Public Works employees to... No? Oh,
Good try.
they want to stay unsung.
Just want to stay outside.
All right, well, we have the motion before us to adopt that proclamation, well-deserved, by the way. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously as well, and that proclamation is approved. Thank you, everyone, for all of those, and that then brings us to our business items. Our first business item this evening is an update and discussion related to the strategic plan goals. And I understand our Assistant City Manager, Ms. Olson, is a little bit is unable to be here this evening, being sort of down for the count, if you will. So Mr. Trudgeon, our City Manager, will fill in for her on this item this evening.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This has really been a team effort throughout the process. As you know, council and staff spent a lot of time together to talk about the bigger pictures, and department head group who's in the audience today have spent a lot of time working on these goals and these next steps here in the success indicators as well. So what we're here to do tonight is really come back on the April 14th meeting. We spent some time going through all the goals and the success indicators ran them by the council, and there were some suggested changes. So I would probably refer you to attachment 6. That's going to show kind of the goals and the success indicators. So I'll just spend a few minutes walking through them real briefly here. And in the document, the changes are in red. So the first change is under economic vitality, goal 3, where we took out the parenthetical about multimodal public transportation, bike, and pedestrian, to struck that out. And moving on to reliable and sustainable infrastructure, goal number 1, we took out the word strategic there. We had strategic funding strategy, so it seemed a little bit redundant. So I'll just clean that up a little bit. And then go down to goal 2, where under the success indicators, we add after approved budget and timeline on both those first two bullets. I think that was a comment from the council. Just to be very clear what we meant by that. Moving down, we get to the community and civic engagement. We did have a change, slight change in goal number 1, where we talk about the types of city decision-making. So it will recreate an environment for diverse stakeholder participation at all levels and types of city decision-making. So that was a relatively minor change, but an important distinction. And then we did work on goal number 2. So this is what has come back from our working group on this. I think the council instructed us to work on some language. So let me read this, and this is something we'd love to have feedback on. The goal would be to utilize Roseville's commissions to provide accessible pathways for residents of all backgrounds to shape city decisions and become better informed residents. That is the goal. Some of those success indicators that we identified are as follows. Residents are aware of and understand the opportunities for participation on city commissions. Secondly, there is a growth in commission appointments from underrepresented groups. Next, commissioners understand their roles and feel that they have an impact on city decision-making processes. And then finally, commissioners are well-informed on issues related to their commission scope. So we should certainly have some conversation around that. I'll just wrap up here, just the last couple of changes here, and we can talk about anything. Under responsive services and safety, under goal number 2, we did add the word training. That's a very important component of the work we do. So to ensure people, resources, training, and technology are in place to respond to the needs of the community. And then goal 3, under the success indicators, try to reword that so it reads better. So it would say historically underrepresented communities feel an increased sense of trust, which leads to an increase in calls for service. And we can certainly have a conversation about if that meets the intent of what the council wanted to see. Then this may want to be the last ones here. Goal number 2, the city attracts and retains. We add the word a diverse group of employees who, instead of align, who support the mission, vision, and values of the strategic plan. So hopefully that tries to capture some of the conversation there, and certainly happy to talk some more about that. And I think that, that's all of the changes that we have. Ultimately, tonight, we like for the council to consider adopting the goals and success indicators as shown on this document and or as changed tonight, so then we can move forward. And after that, I can talk about some of the next steps that we're doing. So be happy to answer any questions you have or hear any
Right.
comments.
Questions, thoughts, feedback from the council? Councilmember Strawn.
Thank you. I think you did a great job of adopting, at least my understanding of what was requested into these goals. And so I think it looks great. I did have an additional question about the community and civic engagement goal number 2. Mm-hmm. In that commissioner piece, this was a potential type of thing, but I wanted to make sure that how commissioners receive that information from the public. And so I quickly penned, commissioners receive and articulate the needs of the citizens they represent, or some piece thereof indicating that they're receiving information from the public and using that in their decision-making process. Otherwise, I thought it was great, but it kind of felt like it was a little bit too much in a vacuum where it didn't, the residents are aware of the understanding of their ability to be on the commission, but then how does that information get from the commissioner possibly to the council? I know personally I'm using the commissioners as another set of ears and eyes to the public to provide that set of information that they might receive.
Councilmember Strong, could you repeat that's just language?
Commissioners receive and articulate the needs of the citizens they represent. But that is not set in stone.
Is that a success indicator? Or is
I felt that
part of
that
the
would
goal?
be, I'm not sure how, if it would be an additional goal or if it would be, I feel like it almost is a separate goal, like they have a responsibility to it, but it's not necessarily separate from, it feels like it fits under goal 2 as well. So I'm very open to how, I just felt like it was a missing piece in there. How do the residents access the commissioners and what is their liaison type relationship to from the public to the council. So very open to the mayor's wordsmithing.
No, you're not.
I really am.
And I didn't mean you specifically. Nobody's open to the mayor's words. I think it may be possible, if it's a goal, to wrap it into the language of the goal itself. It might short circuit things a little bit, but I could see something like for residents of all backgrounds to shape city decisions, something like by representing community input as well as becoming better informed citizens, or something like that, to wrap it in there. I mean, that was definitely not ideal, but a thought of how it could be incorporated. Because it doesn't sound like it's necessarily a success indicator towards a goal, and I'm not sure about having it as a separate goal, since this goal is talking about commissions, but maybe that's a way to try to work something in there. And I'd be open to other thoughts. Obviously, we've only had 2 council members talk at this point, so.
So you're talking about goal number 1?
No,
Goal number
goal
two on
okay.
community and
Just
civic
adding
engagement.
something in that about representing the voices of the community or something like that,
Yeah.
or input from the community, or.
I would agree
something
with
along
you
those
that I don't
lines.
think it's a separate goal really, and I don't think it's a success indicator. I think it's like a part B of goal 2.
Yeah, I could see that, and I don't know about the exact wording, but I agree with the concept of it. I'm not as good as the mayor is at wordsmithing on the fly.
I have a thought on it. on the
There's a
wording.
variety of opinions on that. Councilmember Schroeder.
Maybe we could do something where it says pathways for residents of all backgrounds that represent the voice of the community.
There you go.
Great.
Representing the voice of the community to shape decisions and become better informed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works.
Just a thought.
It's short and sweet.
I like
And
that.
it puts it in a better place in the sentence, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Who knew the finance person would come up with it?
That's why we need everybody here.
So Councilmember Shorter, just for the record, could you repeat that again, so we have that representative voice?
You know, in that where it says for the residents of all backgrounds that represent the voice of the community to shape city decisions. Or something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
And become better informed residents. Makes sense.
I think that
That reads well.
that reads well, and I think that captures what I was hoping to add to that, so thank you.
Okay.
All right, other thoughts, feedback, and questions elsewhere, or on this part, if we haven't finished that?
I guess I would just say that I thought it was really good right the first time around, but it's even better now. I think that taking this last step was really good. It clarified little pieces that are tweaked, and I don't have any other corrections.
Right? Other thoughts, feedback? Councilmember Strong?
I just wanted to add, I really appreciated the way that the wording came out on goal 3 in the responsive services, because I know we really struggled with how do we
Yes.
mention that underrepresented, and I think that ultimate seems to represent what we had spoken of in our conversation well, so thank you.
Yeah, what everybody in the conversation had.
Right,
spoken.
everyone.
Yeah. Right, other thought, Councilmember Bauer?
Under city operations, goal 2, I like what it's changed to. And I can't recall, so we're asking the council for thought, but do we have something along the lines of innovative also for employees? Or need to retain a diverse and innovative group of employees? I thought we had some kind of discussion. It may have been as part of getting to this stage. But we were looking for not just qualified employees, but also those that brought forth along the lines of the mission, vision, values, but how they actually implement that strategic plan as innovative as well. So I'd be in favor of retains a diverse and innovative group of employees.
Could you repeat that again?
Just adding innovative to this, so the
Oh.
city attracts and retains a diverse and innovative group of employees.
Oh, yeah. So
Because I believe we had
innovative.
discussions about that early in the strategic plan process.
Yeah, actually, I do like that.
I appreciate that a lot. I just wonder how it would be quantifiable, but I appreciate the thought that you're looking for somebody who is, working to improve.
I'm not sure how we
systems.
quantify supporting the mission, vision, and values.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I was going to say this. There's many goals
It's not a
here
lot
that
of
are
data
not-
here on that, so.
success indicators are where we start to quantify things.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Other thoughts and feedback?
A general comment about some of these success indicators going forward. Some of these success indicators definitely depend on council votes, right? Be it budgeting, be it votes going forward and whatnot. I'm curious to know how you will then, looking back and say a year going at this, some of these success indicators you won't be able to achieve depending on how the council votes and how you would be able to evaluate that. And granted, there's more than just one
Yeah.
there.
Well, it might be a little bit of a challenge. I think we would be like a report card in the sense that here's what happened, and so the council did or not do something. I can't think of an example off the top of my head that we have a direct measurement of that, but that it would just be information to share, and there might be some other mitigating circumstances and why that happens. But we hope that we're going to have success across the board and have straight A's, but most likely we're going to have some places that we're going to miss a little bit. And that might be one of those variables we just can't control. Hopefully, the decisions that are made by the council in the bigger picture are consistent with our strategic plan and where we're going. And there's always going to be some different ways to do that. And I wouldn't necessarily take a no vote on a particular thing saying, I'm against the strategic plan. Maybe it's just the approach on how we're trying to get that. There's a disagreement on, I still support the goal, but this isn't the way to do it. It'd be another way to look at it. So I think there's a lot of nuance and context with it, but it will just be a report back, and I think the council, to the extent they need to answer to anybody, can explain why they had those votes that way, because of the nuances of the approaches. We talked about this goal number 2, diverse and innovative. It's really about how do we approach our strategic plan. There might be 5 different ways to do that, So you might support one and not support another one, but that doesn't mean you're against the strategic plan. It's just the way that we do it. So I think we have to give some room and grace that there's going to be some not perfect scores and everything, because there's a lot of nuance on things, and some of it we try to make as objective as possible. Some of it's going to be subjective as we come back with these goals, and I think we all have to hold ourselves accountable. Is that accurate? Is that something that we can stand behind saying, yeah, that's how we performed?
And I would agree that not achieving all success indicators does not, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
But is not a requirement for meeting the goal.
And I would just note also that I think as items come before the council for decision-making, presumably a part of the case that will be made to the council in trying to have support of a particular approach is that this approach deals with goal X and success and helps to accomplish success indicator Y in these ways, and so that it's part of the record of the decision-making of the council in that way. And so then I would presume also that if the council were to take a vote against a particular proposal, that the council would articulate how that relates to this achievement of this goal, and so that that's part of the record as well. Anything else? I did want. Oh, Councilmember Schroeder.
Yes, I just wanted to ask the question, the objectives that are in here, are those still just examples?
Yes, those are
Okay.
still examples.
So we shouldn't spend any time really looking at those?
Right. So some of our next steps, we're going to bring back a whole bunch of objectives. But we just want to give an example so you can understand how they connect.
Because I think, because a few of them might be getting to what Councilmember Bauer's talking about, is if some of them say we're going to accomplish this 25% of the master plan, or we're going to increase staffing by 50%. Some of those items, obviously, the council hasn't discussed yet. And so that I just wanted to make sure those were obviously examples, because obviously if we hadn't discussed it or
Yep.
approved it yet, then it's hard to have it as an objective yet until
Yeah,
that's.
absolutely. And
Okay.
so those are just examples. Some of them may just go away completely.
Or they could come,
Or they
either
could
way.
come back
so,
with
yeah.
more detail, and so that is part of those next steps, and we do intend to bring those back so okay, how specifically we're going to carry these out. And, not always, but some of them, they're going to have some impact to our resources, right? So
Absolutely.
you all need to be comfortable with that or not comfortable with that, and we can kind of align those objectives to make sure that we're all rowing in the same direction.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Strawn.
Just one additional comment on attachment one, the community aspirations. I really like the way that has kind of come out to be a very clear aspect of, to representing to the people of our city and outside of our boundaries what we're doing and why. I feel like it's succinct, but really, so I wanted to applaud that. I feel like that particular graphic, I know that's kind of one of Ms. Olson's strengths and gifts and with her associates, but I really think that that is a good representation of all those hours in our joint meetings getting to a shared aspiration. So I appreciate that.
And just along those lines, that's the one piece of feedback I did have on the big goals table, which I'm not sure if that's the final product or if it's going to be as far as how things are presented to the public. But I think the actual language of the aspiration itself was missing from the goals table. The aspiration was just listed as the topic name without the language of the actual aspiration itself. So that was one of the things I noted, that however we communicate this, it would help to have that language, which is very good and well representative of actually the public input process that led to this whole thing, that's reflected in however we present this information to the public, that they can see the wording of the aspiration besides just the name of the aspiration, as then you can dive down at, to deeper levels, to goals and success indicators and things like that.
Yeah, if I could just,
Yeah.
thank you for bringing that up. I think that's really important. Certainly, this is kind of a more working document. It's got way too much text on it already. So whatever public-facing document we would have, we want to have something that's a little more succinct and obviously have the backup. But it's a good point to just keep reminding ourselves.
Right. Or it's sort of a click-through thing where,
Yeah.
you have the aspiration, and then you go to the rest of it or something like that. Sometimes it doesn't all have to be one big spreadsheet,
Right.
believe it or not. Coming from me.
That's a big,
I
Yes.
don't mind.
And then just a very small technical thing on the new goal 2 under the community and civic engagement. I just, at the very end, saying become better informed residents. We already referred to the folks as residents earlier, so I think we can just strike the second word residents in there, and then we're good.
I'm better informed, period.
Be
Yeah.
better informed.
Yep. Shape decisions and become better informed. I think that works. Okay. Do you want the council to take an action on this?
Yes, if possible, I'd like to have a motion to approve the goals with the success indicators as shown in the document and as amended here tonight.
All right, is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Strong, seconded by Councilmember Groff, to approve the goals and success indicators in the document as discussed this evening with the tweaks that we did this evening. Discussion on the motion. As the maker of the motion, Councilmember Strong. As the seconder, Councilmember Groff.
Well, I just want to, thank everybody who's involved in the process, because we've been doing this for several months now, and it's been a really, the public only hears this little bit of it, but there was a lot of thought put into it, and I want to thank everyone who participated in that, and I think it's a really good document we've landed on.
All right, other discussion? Councilmember Schroeder.
I do wanted to say, I also think it's nice that we had discussions around different things, both, our staff, going off and doing it, and then the council too. So we had, I thought, some really robust conversations, and I appreciate that we have that ability so we can take everybody's thoughts and make it a better document in the end, so.
Councilmember Bauer.
And building on Councilmember Schroeder's comment, that'd be really important working together going forward as we work on the objectives. And achieving those will require working together with staff and council.
For sure. All right, with that, we have the motion before us to once again approve these goals and success indicators as outlined and discussed. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That is approved. Another milestone in the process.
Yes.
And now, Mr. Trudgeon,
yeah.
you're going to give us the update on next steps.
Yeah, just a couple things. So first of all, big shout out to the department head team that's here. We spent a lot of time, many hours doing that. and we started going in one direction, and then we had to kind of pull it back because we just didn't like where we were going. So I think by the end of it, we were getting pretty good at doing it, but it took some learning. So, and also a big thank you to Rebecca Olson and Antonio Montez for helping facilitate and keep things organized and all the paperwork and tracking the changes. We couldn't have done it without them. So, but thank you to the whole group for that. So I just want to talk briefly about next steps. If I get the right mouse here. And just so you know, where we're going. So our next steps, as we talked about, is to work on the objectives. And so what we want to do is identify other employees within the organization to work on these objectives that are more subject matter experts. So get below the department head level and get people that are supervisors or frontline staff. We have been on the last, we've met at least twice already to talk about who some of those people are, and we're going to hopefully identify that here tomorrow and start talking about that and later this week here. Once we have that core team identified, we want to be very intentional about it. So we want to give those folks an orientation because they will be coming in cold in a lot of cases with the goals. We've tried to spread it in the organization, but to really spend some time on that. So looking to really have several orientation sessions for those folks to understand the whole process, understand what the goals really, really mean, and then how to write and think about objectives. So we're going to kind of have a little bit of a curriculum. Then over the summer here, work on the objectives and with the end goal of bringing something back later in the year, and we really need to make sure those objectives, once approved and everybody's agreeing, really feed into the 27 budget process next year and really align well with that. So we'll probably check in with you along the way here, but I just want to give you that broad overview. We're really shooting to be done by the end of the year so we can have that in for the 27 budget. We expect there will be several touches with the council later this year on that. So we want to make sure that we're on path here, similar thoughts, and so we don't want to get too far down the road if we're not. So look forward to that. We're excited about that and bringing it down to some other levels of employees to really have some input in what we're going to do. We know that we always, as a staff, try to do as much as we can, so we always have to guard against maybe trying to do too much right out of the gate, but I think the enthusiasm often carries over to that. So we're going to have to check ourselves. We're going to have to rely on you to check ourselves as well to make sure what is realistic and can be done. We don't want to set ourselves up for failure. We want to make sure that we go slow and steady and get the stuff done that's important to do. And there's going to have to be some prioritization too, because we can't do everything all at once. So more to come on that, but just wanted to run that by you, and certainly if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Any questions, feedback from the council? Seems all right.
Okay.
I think it's probably going to be, it's going to work out well that our 26 budget process will be sort of happening at the same time as this discussion, because that might help with the dose of reality on the process. With that, then, thank you again to everybody who's been involved, as has been said already, and we look forward to the continuing involvement through the process, and especially bringing in some of the new folks from the staff point of view. That brings us then to consider a resolution updating the special assessment deferral policy for the city. And we have our city engineer, Assistant Public Works Director Jennifer Lowry with us this evening to bring this item forward. Hello and welcome.
Hello, Mayor, council members. So this is an item kind of attached to or related to the item on consent for processing the special, or moving forward with the special assessments for our County Road B construction from last year. And just going through all the paperwork, crossing our T's and dotting our I's, and checking back on our deferral process. So that the public notice for the public hearing is written correctly, and then kind of raised questions. So our attorney has been very patient in answering all my questions. So our policy or the state statute allows for cities and counties to establish a deferral process or policy, and then we have to spell it out in our ordinance or in a resolution. So we looked at the latest resolution, which was from 1981.
Wow.
I was to say 91. 1981. In 2008, the state did add military service, active military service, to their list of possible qualifiers for deferral. So wanted to bring kind of the policy as a whole back to the council just to ask if we want to add that item. And also just some cleaning up of it and modernizing. The state statute asks you to also kind of decide what qualifies as a hardship and defines a disability. Our current resolution is very detailed in what a disability is, and looking at other cities, they either defer to the Social Security Administration or a physician to determine that someone has a permanent and total disability. Because frankly, I don't want to be that person. So I did attach a resolution with proposed language. I included our 1981 resolution. The state statutes, it's referencing 3 separate statutes that'll give us that power to come up with this, and a St. Paul example. We did talk about it with our Public Works Commission last month. A lot of the conversation was more about hardships that fell outside of these eligible kind of groupings, because the state statute itself is pretty constrained on these are the things that we can talk about in this policy. There's still other processes that in the special assessment process where someone can object to or appeal an assessment. So that process still exists outside of this. This is just deferring it, and so it doesn't lessen someone's payment or assessment. It just defers it, and that deferment continues to accrue interest. And so one of their comments too was about, if someone's going to be doing that, to really understand what that growing interest means in the end. I'll leave it there and see if there are questions or if you need me to go in anything deeper.
All right, thank you. Are there questions from the council on the proposed policy or resolution? Councilmember McGrath.
Thank you for looking at this. 1981 was a long time ago. The question I had was, when you say it's held in trust if it's deferred, is that held with the county, or who? How do we do
We
that?
still file the assessment with the county and tell them it's deferred.
And they keep track of that, and then
Yep.
when the interest accrues at the end, when it's sold or whatever, or transferred, the property's transferred, or the
Correct.
person dies, that it would be
Yep.
paid. Okay, thank you.
So it is recorded on the property.
All right, questions, Councilmember Strawn?
I really don't know how this works, so this is completely in a question of ignorance. But if someone were to leave their home and go into like the county waiver program and be in a nursing home, and they're able to retain their home as an asset for their family, but it eventually goes into foreclosure or it goes back to the state. Are we able to recoup anything if at that point? It seems like we would not if it went into foreclosure. And obviously, that's probably more of a Janice gun lot question. But just understanding as more and more people don't have some type of pension or annuity that's holding them in a nursing home, it seems like more and more homes might be going into that situation where the county would eventually have ownership of that particular property.
I'll take a shot at how I
Okay.
understand it, and then I'll look to Rachel to add to it or correct me. So if, I think it would stay with the property. It's immediately due when it's no longer homesteaded.
Okay.
And so I think that would be like a overdue taxes situation or something. But if it was sold to anyone else, that would then also be due. Whether it's paid by the seller or the buyer, but I'm not sure about foreclosure, which I know kind of doesn't answer your question.
Yeah.
Steering.
Councilmember Strawn, my understanding is if the property is foreclosed upon as opposed to a tax forfeiture, when the payment, whatever payment gets made, part of that would go to the city as it's just like a special assessment. Wayne can probably speak to this intelligently as well. When it's a tax forfeiture, there is a process, I can't remember. I believe that ultimately the city gets paid. It doesn't get wiped out. It may not be until it gets occupied. I can't remember what the trigger is, and I was trying to pick it up real fast and didn't find it. But ultimately, the city would get paid.
Okay, thank you.
When is a really open question, but I believe that ultimately the city does get its money.
Thank you.
Great. Other questions? Councilmember Bauer.
Were there any adjustments to the hardship determination between what we had previously and what, thank you.
Just the military part. But the 1% was the same before.
Great. Councilmember Schroeder.
Yeah, I think it's about time we added this in there. I mean, gee, you're right, that's a long time ago. So I'm actually surprised it wasn't in there back then even, so I absolutely think we need to do this.
Well, if it's any consolation, it took the state from 1981 until 2008 for the state to get it into for the military deferment too. So we weren't the only ones that weren't on the ball.
Better late
But
than never.
Yeah.
for whatever that's worth. All right, we'll just check if there is anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this proposal to add the military category to the deferment on special assessments from the city. Does not appear to be anyone from the public to speak to this item. Then we'll return it to council consideration. We do have the draft resolution, which I don't think there's any reason we couldn't adopt it this evening if we're of a mind to do that, as I understand it. All right.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Strawn to adopt the resolution in the packet, attachment 1, which revises and amends and updates our special assessment deferment policy. Discussion of the motion as the maker, Councilmember Groff.
I think I probably said enough, but I think the main thing is we really thank you for bringing up this because we need to keep these documents current, and this one needed to look at, and I think this is good information to add.
Right. And Councilmember Strawn is the second.
I appreciate bringing this forward as well. You had asked a question about how to determine, and I think deferring to the SSA on their guidelines is probably the best. As you said, you don't want to be the expert on who qualifies and who does not. So I think going with the Social Security Administration's definition of disability seems to make most sense to me as well.
And just to add to that, I think if there is another way that somebody can prove that they are receiving a benefit that's tied to a permanent disability, that ought to be evidence as well of a disability. So to the extent as we work with the process and have materials, you know, I don't know that it needs to specifically only be the Social Security Administration if there happen to be other things, but one would surmise that if you're getting one, you're probably getting all of them just because of the nature of a permanent disability and the strain that it causes on one's finances. So, Councilmember Strawn.
I do know that sometimes people who are in the determination process can be waiting several years, especially maybe someone in end-stage renal disease, some other specific medical condition. So I do appreciate possibly having kind of an open-ended clause should someone be in that process, which may or may not be delayed based on retractions in federal government staffing. So I think it's appropriate to have, you know, defer to SSA, but open to other things. And would you need some guidance on who or how that would be determined if there was a get out of jail?
I think it was St. Paul's language, but I have in the resolution or an affidavit from a physician stating the applicant has a permanent disability and is unable to perform any kind of work.
Yep.
I think that's
That's, okay.
I would be in agreement with that.
Right. I mean, the only we could just add Social Security Administration or other appropriate agency, but I think if it's in the materials that the, you know, I think that's reasonable. It's a resolution, so we've got some flexibility. All right, we've got the motion before us. Is there any further discussion on it? I think the important thing to note too, as was noted by staff, is that this is a deferment
Correct.
of the obligation. It is not it's not a reduction of the obligation, and it is not an elimination of the obligation to pay the assessment. And it is an option that the property owner may choose. I mean, it is certainly not mandatory. The city is not going to force people to defer their assessments if they happen to qualify for these things. With that, we've got the motion before us to adopt the resolution updating our policy. With no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and that is approved. Thank you, Ms. Lowry. That then brings us to a discussion initiating a climate equity action plan related to grant funding that the city has received for that purpose. And we have Noel Bakken, our sustainability specialist, with us this evening, who I had just seen last week at the opening of the Ramsey County Environmental Center in Roseville.
I've been a few places in the last week or so.
I haven't been able to keep up, but that's the one I remember.
I was at the community center on Batu Techa, also had an event on Saturday, and I saw many people there that I also saw on Thursday night. They're like, "Oh, good to see you again." So.
It's just a caravan of people that
It
go
is a
from one
caravan
event to
of
the other.
people.
Yes, yes. Well, welcome, and thank you for bringing this forward this evening.
Yeah, thank you, council members and Mayor Rowe, for the opportunity to come and discuss this. This is just a discussion mostly to talk through our general ideas for the completion of a climate action planning engagement period. Since we don't often have the chance to kind of discuss sustainability overall, and there's some newer faces on the council, I'm also going to do a quick look back on what we've done with sustainability in the last decade or so. We've done that with our Public Works Commission, and I thought that might be helpful to ground us in where we're coming from and where we're going. So going back all the way to 2009, that was when we adopted our 2030 comp plan process. We also entered into the U.S. Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement in 2007, performed an initial emissions inventory, and that was when our geothermal system was installed that connects the skate center to the fire station. 2012, we started looking into joining the Green Step program. We worked with the University of Minnesota on a couple of sustainability studies, worked with clean energy resource teams on some other projects as well, and then finally joined the Green Steps Cities program in 2014. The year after that, we started benchmarking our city buildings in a program called B3, where we can track our energy usage year over year and look for opportunities for improvement. 2016, we completed campus energy audits and also started our investigation into what it would look like to add solar to a few city buildings. 2017, oh, sorry about that, that U of M logo was not supposed to be there. We worked with the University of Minnesota again on a couple of capstone projects, including kind of work we could do for Green Step and also our Complete Streets policy. We also, as is blocked by the U of M logo, we completed a vulnerable population study that was part of a grant from the MPCA as well, and kind of gave us a baseline to start from. 2019 was a big year. We installed solar on a few city buildings, City Hall, fire station, and the maintenance facility. Council also approved our Complete Streets and environmentally preferable purchasing policies, and we reached Soul Smart Gold, which was a process of making sure our code was up to date, and then our permitting process wasn't too burdensome for residents to add solar. So now the highest ranking you can reach is platinum. We're exploring ideas of how we can get there. Things really took off in 2020. Despite the year, we hired a Minnesota Green Corps member who worked with the city on a bunch of projects. We applied to be part of the Partners in Energy program with Excel Energy. We expanded the buildings we were tracking in B3. I believe we added our park buildings as well. We also achieved Green Step 4 for the first time. In 2021, we officially joined the Partners in Energy program, and our Energy Action Plan was adopted by Council in June of 2021. We had a voluntary benchmarking program that our Green Corps member was working on at the time. Work with businesses on energy savings, and we also achieved Step 5 for the first time. We also won the Best of B3 benchmarking award that year. We showed the highest improvement in utilities savings for all local governments represented in B3. So as an intern, I got to present at that, and I knew almost nothing about what I was talking about. 2022, we maintained Green Step 5. So to maintain Green Step 5, you have to continue showing improvement over several metrics year over year. We created an EV charging station plan to kind of give us some ideas of where we could put chargers in public spaces once money and things became available. We created the Sustainable Steward program to recognize residents and businesses doing extraordinary work in sustainability in the city, and also created our sustainability newsletter and some specific branding just to make the work stand out a little bit more. And that logo is seen below. 2023, we hired a full-time sustainability specialist, the first role. That's me. I was thrilled to join the team. We won the League of Minnesota Cities Sustainable City Award for our work on our Partners in Energy planning and implementation. We won the CEE Intercity Home Energy Squad Challenge for having the most home energy squad visits per capita in a pool of 26 cities. And we also adopted an ordinance that requires significant redevelopment or new development to include EV charging stations in public or commercial properties. Sadly, didn't win any awards in 2024, but we did pass our Green to Go ordinance. That was a huge milestone. We also received Charging Smart Bronze certification. It's a new national program very similar to Soul Smart, but with EV charging and electric vehicles. And Roseville was one of the first cities awarded that certification in the country. So that was exciting. And then we also began work on our bike plan. These are our sustainability goals in the comp plan so far. Our 2040 comp plan sets forth goals to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by 2050 relative to 2005 levels. As of 2020, at least looking at emissions due to energy production, we're actually down 35%, which is a pretty good milestone, and I'm looking forward to seeing where things are at once we kind of get a new inventory and get some updated numbers. We look to have 100% city operations electricity coming from renewable sources by 2040. We'd like to have 25% of city operations electricity to come from on-site generation by 2040. Currently, with the 3 buildings we have, we'll generate about 5%. That will tick up very slightly when we add solar to our booster station. We just submitted the Solar for Public Buildings full application today, so more to come on that soon. And we'd also like to produce enough inbound solar electricity to meet 10% of citywide electricity use by 2030. So these are goals that have been in place for a while, and we'd like to take a second look at them to make sure that they're still up to date. Especially our greenhouse gas reduction goal is lagging a little bit behind what the state is now putting forth for their goals in neighboring communities. That's one thing we'll take a look at and figure out how we can, if we want to continue working on these other goals, how can we best measure these, because we don't necessarily have all the data to get some of this as well. So that is where we've been. So I wanted to talk a little bit about why it's important for us to have a climate equity action plan. And right from what we were just talking about, going back to that goal setting, we really want to use this planning opportunity to set measurable and specific goals so we know when we're reaching success. And as we've kind of seen some of that discussion through the strategic planning, it's important to be able to know how you can measure success. Bring our existing goals up to date and then align with other city goals. And along that note, we'd also like to align with county and state goals. So the big picture to the right shows the 6 goals in the Minnesota State Climate Framework. Ramsey County used those 6 goals to produce all of their kind of sub-goals and action items for their plan. My plan is to do the same with Roseville's plan so that it nests very nicely underneath the counties and the state's goals. So that not only really gives us a lot of good opportunities to work together, even more than we already are. It also gives us opportunities for funding when the state produces grant programs. If we're already working under the state's climate priorities, then that gives us more opportunity to get money. And then it also gives us a chance to focus our efforts locally. So we've done a lot of really exciting work at the city, but it's kind of been opportunistic and, what shiny object is coming where. This way, once we finish this plan, we'll actually have a roadmap for what do we want to achieve in 5 years, 10 years, those general timeframes, so then we know, okay, these near-term goals, this is where we're going to focus on finding grant funding for or community support, etc. And then why equity specifically? This is one of our core values that I know has come up with strategic planning. I just took that straight from the minutes from today's meeting, off to the right. There's an entity called C40 Cities that also has a lot of resources for cities, including a climate action plan kind of template and guidebook. And in that guidebook, they say that climate change is inextricably linked to the challenge of creating a more equal world. So as I've seen working at the city in the last few years, climate change and sustainability really kind of reaches out into all different departments and working areas. I've worked with planning, I've worked with fire, I've worked with Parks and Rec, admin on different things. And government's role is really to help support all residents in the city, especially those who are more vulnerable to the effects of climate change. So it's important that we make sure that we are creating throughout the entire framework ways that we can support anyone who's extra vulnerable to the effects of climate change. That includes people who don't speak English either at all or not as their first language, the elderly. We have a larger population of folks over 65 in Roseville than a lot of neighboring areas in the state overall, young people, and people experiencing poverty and economic stress. A few plans that we've been looking at as we've been thinking about this process are, the Minneapolis Climate Equity Plan was passed in 2023 as an update to their previous climate action plan. Each goal category that they have used in their plan centers both how equity is impacted by those topics, such as like transportation or energy usage, and also what the climate impacts of those different categories. So that's one thing we'll probably look to mirror. As I mentioned, Ramsey County has their Climate Equity Action Plan that was passed early last year. They're working on goals for the next 4 years for both mitigating the effects of climate change and adapting to the effects of climate change. And then finally, St. Paul is working on a large update to their Climate Action and Resilience Plan. And as part of that, they have a climate justice advisory group that I will be referencing in a little bit. So let's talk funding sources. So you may have heard a little bit for a while that we were going to be using funding from the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Fund, also known as EECBG. We received $76,000 in formula funding in 2023 as part of the Inflation Reduction Act to do some kind of climate change or resiliency project. And so we thought, great, we really need a climate plan. Let's apply for that. So we submitted our application or our project, overall project idea in January 2024. As of late last year, hadn't heard anything about, we were supposed to receive a technical assistance provider from the federal government that we were going to work with on this process. As of late 2024, we hadn't heard anything. I knew that the MPCA was coming out with another round of local climate grant planning opportunities, and so decided to look into applying for that because we'd been saying, well, next year is going to be the climate action plan, or next year. It just kind of kept getting pushed out, and I didn't want to push it out anymore. It's time to put it together. So as of right now, as I've been sending the Department of Energy multiple email requests to see if there's any updates, or our funding is kind of in purgatory at this point. It's not necessarily canceled or paused, but the department, I think, is a little bit understaffed. And right now, I've been trying to get in touch with them to see if we can actually change. We had a technical assistance voucher, but we had the option to also change that to an equipment voucher. So we would use that for something like electric vehicle charging stations. That's my hope, that if we can manage to get that funding at some point, we'll use it for that. So more to come on that. But as I mentioned, I applied for the Pollution Control Agency Local Climate Action Planning Grant. We were lucky to be awarded. I applied back and it was due in January this year, so I basically applied thinking that we were going to use a consultant for doing the entire plan development, everything. I learned that Ramsey County also applied for the same grant. Ramsey County wishes to provide assistance to multiple cities in the county on climate planning, so it'll be Roseville, Shoreview, and Lauderdale will work with the county on developing climate plan data and goals and that kind of thing. So right now, we're currently in the middle of just figuring out the work plan specifics and making sure we're not double dipping from the state, so that we're kind of saying Roseville's going to be doing this, Roseville's going to be, or Ramsey County is going to be doing that. So our award was $49,975, and we are required to provide a 50% match, which comes out to be $24,987.50. We have that money in our environmental budget for professional services. And this is a project that will span between 2025 and 2026. So we won't be spending all of that in one go either. And then there's no cost to the cities to work with Ramsey County on their portion. So this is kind of where the draft scope of work is looking right now. So Ramsey County will be providing a lot of the technical assistance for getting data, putting the plan together. They're going to put a template together for cities to use that's kind of based on the Ramsey County plan itself. And so with that, there's not really a lot of additional assistance for community engagement. So my proposal is to use our grant for a really robust community engagement piece. So for us, that means a survey that would be community-wide and open for a while to get a lot of good feedback, 2 climate engagement workshops throughout the year. Again, working with that climate justice advisory group. More on that in a bit. Internal staff planning engagement, so working a little bit with a few core departments to talk about what a climate plan is, what the impact to their department might be, and get their take on different goals as well to make sure we're not setting goals that are too, pie in the sky. Also looking to do some really interesting interdisciplinary work. I've been part of a couple of climate storytelling workshops recently, and it's a really powerful way to connect people directly to other people's stories and the kind of the human aspect of climate change. And so we're looking at hiring someone that would specifically work on that, to develop a few stories from several residents, what their connection to climate change and the environment is, possibly working with a local artist to pull some quotes out of there and create some artwork that's related to that, and also do some art-centered youth engagement. So I think it would be a really great way to personalize the plan itself to Roseville. So even though we are working with Ramsey County and a couple other cities, this will make the plan really deeply rooted in Roseville values and hear from a lot of interesting residents. And so from that community engagement, we'll get a lot of feedback from residents on what they're hoping to see from the city, what their priorities are in regards to climate change and sustainability, and use that to help develop our goals and the metrics that we'll be using to track those goals. And then we'll finalize the plan, and it'll come back to City Council in June of next year, probably. So going back to that climate justice advisory group that I've been mentioning, I'm thinking about a small group of residents, a core group of 12 to 15 people, hopefully a diverse range of backgrounds and socioeconomic basis. But it'll be a core group that'll work with me and the consultants a few more times throughout the year than just the 2 big community engagement groups. So we'll work with them to make sure that we're centering equity and justice throughout the planning process. That climate storytelling consultant that I'm looking at will also work with them on developing their climate stories. And they'll just continue to work a little bit more closely with the city throughout the planning process. So I've already started to reach out to a few different locations to start getting some leads for that, but I'm going to be putting a more formal proposal out. But St. Paul has a similar board that meets every other month. That was created from a council resolution. The members were appointed by the council and the mayor. I don't think ours needs to be this formal for now. I think ours will be a little bit more casual, and then if it seems like it makes sense to continue it, we'll look into formalizing it maybe after the planning process. But I really liked St. Paul's language in their kind of application, in their ask, is that no expertise is required to serve, but the city will look to appoint people who represent the broad spectrum of St. Paul's population, who demonstrate a high level of interest, experience, and expertise, or both. In particular, the city aspires to a strong representation from BIPOC communities that are most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change and are already disproportionately experiencing environmental racism. So I really liked that they kind of pointed out that you don't need to be an expert in any one thing to serve, and that's kind of my goal with it. I don't want someone to feel like they need to be an expert in climate change to be part of this. They just need to be, part of our community and an expert in our community more than anything else. So we'll be working with Antonio a little bit on that as well. So here's a draft timeline of the work, kind of a complex Gantt chart here, but anything that's green, it would be Roseville's responsibility. Anything that's gray will be the county's responsibility. And then anything that's in red is kind of a key milestone or event. And I apologize if anybody is red, green, colorblind. I just now realized that. So this might change. This is kind of a very rough draft of this because we're still working out that kind of the scope with the county and the state. But the main point of all this is to say that this process will be wrapped up by June of 2026 because that's the requirement from the MPCA grant opportunity, is that all the reporting needs to be completed by June of next year. So really the goal is to hit the ground running with community engagement this summer while it's beautiful out and people are already outside, hoping to really wrap up the majority of that engagement by fall, late fall, early fall, and then use the winter and early spring months to really kind of put that data all together and put that into a final plan. And that'll be ready for review, and we'll check in with council and commissions throughout that process as well. So this isn't the last time you'll see me before June. And then just looking ahead generally to 25, 26 in the future for sustainability, what we're kind of looking at doing. In addition to climate action planning, we're working on green to go ordinance implementation. Our bike plan is getting finalized very soon. We've been working still on ways we can implement our energy action plan. Pollinators, we just, our native plant sale is ongoing at this point and has had a lot of attention and orders already. So it's been really exciting to see the interest that's come in through that. And then with recycling and solid waste, there's a lot coming up in the next year with the transition to waste management in July, as well as the transitioning from the from the Eureka carts to the carts that the city owns. So, and we always have our eye on the potential curbside organics pickup that will come sometime in maybe 26 or 27. So, but just wanted to give you an idea of some of the other projects that we're looking at beyond this as well. So that's a lot that I just threw at you. Any questions or discussion? So we're not looking for any votes or anything at this point. We're hoping to come back on the 19th to award the project to two consultants likely, one for that storytelling aspect and then one for kind of the general community engagement plan as well. So.
Right, and I just on the notion of engagement, I wanted to see if we're planning to like table at Juneteenth and,
Oh, yeah.
and some of the Discover Your Parks events and things like that, which you're talking about people being out in the community.
Mm-hmm.
Those are those perfect opportunities. I imagine you'll be at Community in Bloom this weekend.
I will be at Community in Bloom, yeah, but Juneteenth, I should have mentioned that, but yeah, I'm usually at 6 or 7 events throughout the summer. So I'll definitely be at those to promote what we're working on with the climate plan. Juneteenth, Taste of Rose Fest, I'll be at a table there as well. And in addition to those kind of 2 big community events that I want to host that are just for Roseville residents as well.
No, it's a great way to recruit people for the group and things like that too. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that you noted that it doesn't have to be appointed by the mayor and council, because at first I was reading that and I thought, oh, we don't need to, because we don't do that with like our multicultural advisory committee and some others. So it makes sense not to formalize it too much. I think that helps encourage participation.
That's the goal, and it's not going to be a huge commitment that we're asking of people on that group. It's going to be probably 3 to 4 meetings throughout the 12-month planning process, so it's still going to be fairly light. I already have a couple people who are interested, but as you mentioned, even since I've been tabling since last year, I've actually been letting people know that this is on the horizon and to get on our sustainability list if they want to get updates. So we've definitely increased our newsletter capacity as well from that.
Great. Councilmember Bauer.
This presentation, maybe it's in the paper packets, but I don't believe it's in the electronic packets.
It's not. I can send it to the council after this.
Yeah, since it's presented, it's probably a good idea.
Yep, absolutely.
So just trying to review this since you presented. Can you go back a few slides where you have the split between, yes, this slide. So the scope of the work is roughly $76,000 you said available to do this? And so we'll be utilizing that $76,000 to accomplish those bullet points on the left-hand side?
It may be a little bit under. So there's a few items in some of the work plans that we've received from the consultants that may or may not overlap with Ramsey County, and so that's something that I need to check with the state on whether or not they consider that an overlap. So one good example is kind of that goal setting, where we're really going to be working a lot internally to put those goals together, and the county's going to offer some kind of high level assistance, but I see that as really being something that we'll be working on in-house, and that's another line item on the consultant's proposal that would add to that cost, but likely will be probably coming under that amount.
And this was a matching grant, right? So we needed to provide roughly 24,000.
It's a 50% match overall. So if we wind up actually spending less, then that match would be less as well.
And we took away from other projects that we will not be doing now because we've utilized that $24,000 towards this.
No, we didn't
Or is
have
it just over budgeted that account?
It was over budgeted at the point. So, but this is a new line item for us in the budget as well. So we didn't have any projects. This is really what that budget item was for climate planning. That's, I think, what Ryan and Jesse mentioned. It was for professional services for development plan.
And the consultants you speak of sounds like they've been decided. Will that be competitively bid out and brought forward for those contracts to be awarded, or has it been decided already?
We are just about ready to let them know that we've selected them. We did not do a competitive RFP. I asked several times to make sure that wasn't a thing that we needed to do. Given the amount, it sounded like that was not crucial for us. So I selected a few consultants that I knew were very well known to be very helpful and produce really good work within the climate community, and interviewed them in the last several months and got some proposals from them. And so I looked at those, Public Works looked at those, and then I also had Antonio take a look at them as well to give me his ideas. So that's kind of the casual vetting process
Okay.
we've been using, and then we'll be bringing them back on the 19th for a full final approval.
And then, I don't know, it might be back a couple of slides where you're noting the, I think it's with the environmental justice, where you note the affected groups. Oh, yes, this one. So, when we go back and we have to explain this to residents and communities, I was hoping you could help me understand what I would say to spending $76,000 to the non-English, elderly, young, those experiencing poverty, $76,000 on a plan for them, because they're going to hear we spent $76,000 to figure out a plan or come up with goals.
I see. Well, it's a climate plan, like I mentioned. It's important to both put this plan together to develop our goals and really sharpen our focus on what we're working on at the city. But second of all, it's really important that we make sure that we plan for how those folks are going to be affected by climate change, the effects of increased heat and things like that we're going to be seeing, because they're the people who are going to be really struggling when, we've got those days of heat waves where if there's an elderly person that doesn't have air conditioning in their home, we need to come up with ideas for how we can support that community. Young kids are more susceptible to things like asthma from air pollution. So things like looking at electric school buses and ways we can reduce emissions throughout the city to improve air quality was going to be beneficial for young kids like that. We have a pretty significant immigrant community, especially kind of in the southeast Roseville area, where folks are still new to the country, a little bit distrustful of government. And so it's really important that we also really make a big effort to make sure that their needs and desires are heard as well through the planning process.
Okay.
Right, other questions, comments, Councilmember Strawn?
Oh, I think that all of that is a great idea, but I think it's for all of Roseville with an attention to that. I think
Correct.
it's not just on one population of.
Correct.
It's all of Roseville, but realizing that some people are, disproportionately impacted. I went back to the vulnerable populations and climate adaptation framework from 2017, which looks like was put together by the MPCA with the city of Roseville. And I feel like this is a nice offshoot of that work that was done and then kind of stopped. And so I was wondering if you could speak to that and maybe make sure that the council has access to that. If you didn't necessarily know where to find that information, that full report of 100 and some pages really speaks to the disparities based on economics of climate resilience and climate adaptation, and then just understanding those vulnerabilities and how those impact disproportionately people who have some of those, fall into some of those vulnerable populations. But indeed, it's all of us who have an impact, potential impact by the changes in climate. So I think when you see that we already have a 104-page document noting Roseville specifically, granted it's 8 years old now, it's a great rooting tool in where we've been and where we're going or not going, and can be used as a great anchor to kind of bring us forward. So I think it's really important to make sure that newer folks to our city and to this process realize that this is not a new study, and now we have this kind of anchor from which to build on and help us grow in this climate action. But that climate action is for all of us, with understanding the disproportionate effect on some populations.
Correct. So the question is, where is that? I apologize, I'm a little unsure what your question is now. You just want to make sure that
I think it
we're,
was maybe answering a previous question.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we brought into this discussion the Climate Vulnerability and Adaptation Report.
yes.
So people realize that's there. A lot of people don't know that it exists, that that's part of this conversation. And I think if that also maybe speaks to the why are we spending this money on
Yes.
$76,000, it's really a continuation of a process which we've been in the midst of for a while. It's the next step in this, and we have this opportunity with this grant to build it even further on this climate action, equity action plan, to actually take what we did before and see actionable change for the future.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think I should have mentioned in this presentation, but the plan will connect with other plans across the city. So the eventual 2050 comp plan that'll be starting pretty soon, the natural resources master plan, the bike plan that are putting together, the pathway master plan, and others will make sure that those are all referenced throughout the plan as well, so that we're not just kind of starting from scratch, but we're saying this supports these objectives in this plan and these objectives in this plan. But I appreciate your point too, that it's kind of been a long journey to this as well. And I would say that putting together a plan like this makes us a good steward of taxpayer money as well, because that way it gives us that pathway to move forward and the framework that we're going to go from starting once the plan is in place, instead of kind of seeing what opportunistically is available to us or kind of whatever is of interest at the current moment. It'll keep us focused and using that money wisely, especially since we're a lean staff of 2 with myself and Ryan. So there's only so much we can accomplish in 5-10 years as well. So.
Councilmember Strawn?
Just to follow up, I do think I've heard repeatedly from various city members that last study was done and then it felt like nothing happened. So I feel like this is a really, as you say, a good steward of the funding that's already been placed in that, to take it and develop it from there. It's not, we don't have to start from zero. We already have a baseline there. And so I think it is showing that we are good stewards of taking and connecting that and bringing that forward with this other grant opportunity.
Yeah, and I think one other point that I wanted to make too regarding equity is that, when we're planning for a healthy climate future, in the face of climate change and all the effects that we're expecting to see, things like, increasing tree canopy, adding bike lanes and things like that, they kind of benefit everybody in a lot of ways. It's kind of like when you think about how ADA and disability adjustments kind of help everyone, even though not everybody may be disabled. Everyone might be at some point, and, having ramps and more accessible, ways to cross the street and ways to enter a building and ways to participate in meetings kind of has a benefit for the general population as well. And so I think that's how I'm viewing this climate plan as well, that we're trying to plan for the most vulnerable parts of Roseville that will also benefit all of Roseville, if that makes sense.
Councilmember Schroeder?
Thank you for that last comment particularly. I think it was really good for you to go through the history, and I think Councilmember Strawn's reference to the vulnerable populations report, I actually circled that too, as in, I think it might make sense to tie that into this, so then we understand how that works. But to what Councilmember Bauer was talking about, I think what would be really good, and you were alluding to it with your last comments there on the benefits. So I think, so then you can say, we are doing this because it's going to benefit, this population, but it's, also benefiting everybody, and I think that's really important to show that why, as part of why we're doing this is how that's benefiting our population. Because, like you talk about the tree canopy and, things like that, I think are really good things to, bring in, and, why that is a good thing. Well, I mean, some of us, I think, intuitively understand it, but not everybody does. And so to be able to spell out the benefits a little bit more, because I think, again, getting back to, there's a lot of newer people or people who have not had this journey, to be able to, here's the journey, yet still, and this is why we're doing it. And it's like, oh, okay. So yeah, so I think that'll help, get people to understand it as well, because I think that's kind of the goal about trying to make things better and for everybody, and to be able to show what that looks like. I think would be, let's concentrate on some of the positive side. So I think that's good. And you were starting to talk about that on your last comment, so thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Right. Councilmember Groff?
And what I'm taking away from it is that you're saying this is it is called a plan. So it's a proactive thing. I know we overuse that word, but or that phrase. but it's so that we aren't just like, almost like whack-a-mole or whatever. You know, okay, here's a shiny object over here, let's focus on that, because
Correct,
it's actually a
yes.
plan, so it's a better use of our money to have a plan, so that we have our focus on the items that we get the most benefit from and that affect and benefit the population of Roseville. So
Yeah,
that's what my takeaway from your discussion was.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really big point, is that we've done a lot of really great work in the last few years, but or the last couple decades, honestly, but it's been very kind of whenever the opportunity arises or the political will arises, and this will help us figure out, okay, this is what we're going to be working on. And the Energy Action Plan is a great example of that, because we were able to get an inventory from Excel Energy of which sectors were using a lot of energy, and how residents are affected, and so that really helped inform our engagement efforts and where we wanted to do our reach outs and some of our work with businesses especially. So that's kind of, I see that extrapolating out on a much larger scale with the climate plan, since it's a much broader scope than the energy plan especially. So, and figuring out ways that, where is Roseville able to make a difference, and then where are some areas that maybe we need to defer to the county or this state for different things as well, because sometimes that's not always clear whose role is to do what and who can really move the needle where. So that's what this plan is also, to help us understand.
Well, and I think that helps that we're working with the county, because hopefully we can pretty clearly define those roles then in the process. And I think it makes sense to have, as has been said, it makes sense to have a plan to be able to make sure that we're focusing where we need to be focusing and having the impact where we need to have it. It still will always, with anything, it will be a question of matching resources to what we say our plan is. And so we always have that struggle with everything we do. But I think if you don't have a plan, how do you know where you're short on resources or where you need to allocate resources? So I think it makes sense. And I did want to just take a moment to acknowledge that actually, going back to at least 2005 in the Imagine Roseville 2025 process, we had a huge amount of feedback from the community, in what I would call kind of early days of compared to where we are now, and awareness of these issues, and also, community a push for decision makers to do things about it. And that was a clear focus of the feedback we got from the community then. And so it's been, I think, a guiding light for what the city has been trying to do without a plan all this time. So it's good that we continue to have that push from the community to focus in this area. And the only other thing I would note, that Energy Action Plan is nice, but it's really centered around all of basically the programs that Excel has to help people
Correct.
do the things that would be helpful for sustainability in the community that they offer, being a major consumer of energy to provide electricity and gas for customers. So certainly, it makes sense to tie in with that and do what we can to connect people to those resources, but that's just a piece of it, not the bigger picture that this will be. So, Councilmember Bauer.
Yeah, I agree with that. And to ensure that this keeps on going, I'm curious to know, we're dependent on a grant this time to do this work. I'm curious to know what skills or what things are we lacking in Roseville, or like with staff or resources that we have, so we could keep something like this going and not be dependent on grants. Like, what areas are we missing to achieve those bullet points that you have? Like, what do we need yet?
Yeah,
Is it missing a hire? Is it training? Is it a skill?
I think a lot of it just comes down to capacity, and that's a lot of times why cities wind up hiring consultants, is they're kind of filling capacity that they don't have at the city. So, for example, I'm full-time, but I don't necessarily have all the capacity and necessarily the knowledge either to be able to formulate a really, robust and detailed community engagement plan, or figure out how to manage those meetings with, however many people show up. So that consultant is going to be there to help augment the skills that I already have and add some skills that they have as far as community engagement, using the probably using the IAP2 spectrum of participation to make sure that we're trying to engage residents at a high level. But it helps build out that capacity where I'm also managing Green to Go, I'm managing questions from residents on a native plant sale, I'm doing, community engagement, some of the standard things that we're already doing, where I'm out, 7 or 8 times throughout the summer and fall, planning zero waste events. There's a lot that's already kind of on my plate, even though it says I'm a specialist. I'm very much a generalist at the city, honestly. So that those consultants will kind of come in to do some of that heavier lifting that I might not always have the time to do. We do have an intern that'll be coming at the end of this month that'll be helping me out with both the Green to Go and the climate action planning this year too, which I'm really excited about. We looked into actually hiring a Green Corps member to help manage the Green to Go program as well, just because that's kind of a lot of running out and visiting with restaurants and planning certain events and things like that. But Green Corps, they couldn't, just didn't fit with the philosophy of their program. They required that, a Green Corps member cannot work to benefit a for-profit entity. And so we actually ran into that with our previous Green Corps member with the, I mentioned, voluntary benchmarking program. He couldn't speak directly to businesses, so that was a bit of a barrier to, to getting that off the ground. But, eventually there might be a need to add a staff member or two, depending on what kind of projects we add on. So, I have a lot of different ideas for things I'd like to implement, different programs that I'd like to add to the city, which might require some budget, but also requires somebody to manage those programs and get them off the ground. And so that's kind of what the plan will help us identify, honestly. It'll help us figure out where might we need some more capacity to help out. Is it somebody who's more of a solid waste specialist? Do we need somebody who is, a transportation specialist to help with, bike planning or something like that? And I honestly don't really know where that capacity is going to be needed, but I think that's a big part of what this planning process is about. Does that answer your question? I feel like I really
just want
talked
to
a
make
lot.
sure that staff has got the resources and whatnot, and if there's opportunities or something that when we look forward to the budget, like there's training or other things that are necessary to do that. But I was guessing that was probably capacity, but I still wanted to ask the question.
Yeah, it's a great question, and as we've mentioned, this role that I'm in is new. Somebody hasn't been in this role full time up until 2023, which is just 2 short years ago, and so we're still kind of even figuring out what this role looks like and what the responsibilities of my role is. And I've just kind of continued to add things, so it's at some point I'm going to have to stop adding things. But again, the plan will help us figure out when and where we need to maybe add capacity, and there's other cities that we can look to for support on that as well. When did they see the need to add a staff member? St. Louis Park is a great example. So.
Councilmember Strawn.
Just wanted to add, I know that I offered the council 2 summers ago when we were doing our community engagement piece to maybe be on the ground at some of the parks things and give us a specific job that needed to be. You are often there, and I hear your name mentioned so much in the community, and as a resource that people, oh yeah, I already talked to Noah. I already know. So, but sometimes it's nice. It's great to go to the community events, but if we have a job, that's okay too. So I don't know. I certainly can offer for myself, and I won't offer for anyone else, but I know that it can be, if we're going to be at events already, we can maybe be there in the capacity of trying to get more input from some of these specific things, if that's a need, since Noelle is just one person.
Yeah, well, and not to say that I can't attend an evening event here and there either. I mean, that's pretty, sometimes it depends on the prep, but if it's a low-key event like a Discover Your Parks, I'm probably not going to have to bring the whole tent table game setup that I bring to a weekend event. I can just kind of come and answer questions, which is really easy. And that's what I enjoy the most, honestly, is getting to know residents and having these discussions. And it's been really gratifying to talk to people about, this is what we're planning on this year. We're going to start a climate action planning process, and people are very excited about that. And I'm excited to finally start doing it this year after kind of talking about it for 2.5+ years.
I think, Councilmember Schroeder.
Just when you're looking at your groups of people to invite in, I would encourage you to also make sure and reach out to the watershed people. And because I think that might be a good add to one of the advisory groups.
Yeah, that's a great call out. I have started a non-exhaustive list of different stakeholders that will be kind of invited to be part of the process, which includes elected officials. Watersheds is another great recommendation. Different nonprofits around the area. But that's a really great call out. Thank you.
Right, and I did want to provide an opportunity for members of the public to speak to this to the extent that folks want to do that. Certainly, as was noted, we're not making a decision this evening. We'll have the grant before us at one of our upcoming meetings to to approve any kind of agreement associated with that, and potentially contract with the consultant as well. But if there is anyone from the public that did want to speak to this item this evening, or do want to provide that opportunity, not mandatory. If you're here to just gather information, that's totally okay too, but did want to open up that opportunity. And while you're coming up, I'll just note for quick, the rules of the road for public comment. Have a seat and just state your name and address or street for the record to start your comments, and then address comments or questions to the council. And there's probably a 3-minute time limit if I can find my clock.
I don't intend to talk that long. I'm Allison Jensen. I live on Eldridge, in between Hamlin and Lexington. And I just want to say that I think Noel's been doing a great job. And it seems to me to be able to take some time and really assess where we are and what we need to continue to make progress, which has been considerable, I think is really fantastic. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Mayor and council members.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else for public comment? Doesn't appear to be the case. All right, then, as was noted, we don't have a specific action this evening. Hopefully that conversation has been helpful and gets us to where we need to be when we have this back before us at our next discussion.
I appreciate all the comments and questions, a lot of really great discussion. I will send out a copy of this presentation as well to all the members of the council,
Right.
as well as a link to the climate vulnerability report that we have online, so.
Okay, and definitely if the presentation could be part of the online packet for the meeting
We'll-
going
we'll
forward.
add it
that'll
back
be-
in.
Yeah, that'd be great. All right.
Thank
Great.
you very much.
I think that brings us to the end of our business items this evening. That then brings us to consideration of some council minutes. We have the minutes from our April 14th EDA meeting, our April 14th council meeting, and our April 21st council meeting. Are there any changes or corrections to any of those minutes beyond what's been presented, or a motion to approve one or all?
We're approving what is in the bench handout.
Well, and specifically in the case of those minutes, yes. I believe the bench handout reflects some late-breaking changes that came in after Thursday or after Wednesday of last week. And it's specifically for the April 21st minutes.
So this is just for the EDA?
This is just the April 21st council minutes, it
Council
appears. That's all, that's what's in the bench handout. And I think there was some
No, I mean, but-
particular,
Okay,
we don't have a motion yet, but those, so
Okay.
we've had EDA on the 14th, council on the 14th, and council on the 21st as the items we'll be acting on in terms of minutes. It was just that, and I apologize, I can't track down exactly what were the changes in red on the bench handout. Those are beyond what was in the feedback that was provided otherwise, or it kind of looks like it combines
It
everything.
appears to be a blend of feedback.
Okay, can you specifically point out, Councilmember Bauer, what were the particular changes that you had put in, if you can track it down?
I noted, I think, well, not exact wording, but the wording that is the initial on council discussion, noting the Councilmember Strawn's comment, noting and then the verbiage for one of the other reasons for tabling the vacation, I think was it B, was also wording on that vacation. I added that as well.
And if you could say page and
Oh, sorry,
line number.
line number, so 200. There's
okay.
some of what I stated in there. Just 'cause that was a
in the bench handout.
Bench handout,
time.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then around comments in 225 as well, or line number 225. I thought that was missing. I also comment that
okay.
for as much discussion as there was, I was surprised that the minutes came back so brief.
It's a double-edged sword.
It is,
You know,
it
it's
is.
not a
I-
transcript, but I think, you know, the ability to summarize. But I thank you for noting on the top of page 6, line 225, the discussion about the language of the particular resolution, because I think that was a particular item that was part of the reason it came back. And then on line 240, my suggestion, as was noted in the cover email, had been that staff move that comment to line 200, because I think Councilmember Strawn was the first person to comment under council discussion at that point, and so it just made sense timing-wise to locate that there in the minutes. And then so the additional 2 lines beyond that is what is a version of, I think, what Councilmember Bauer had offered there.
And did not make a comment on line 272. I don't know who that was.
That was mine. Right. Is there any changes to the April 21st as presented in the bench handout?
No.
Otherwise, it appears that a motion to approve all 3 would be otherwise in order at that point.
So moved.
Second,
Right, it's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Schroeder to approve all 3 of those minutes as outlined. Discussion on the motion. Councilmember Groff is the maker. Councilmember Schroeder is the seconder. Other discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Those minutes are approved. Thank you, everyone. That then brings us to our consent agenda. Mr. Trudgeon, if you would go through the consent agenda for us.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Item 10A approves payments in the amount of $735,101.61. Agenda item 10B approves the purchase of a 250 truck for the skating center and golf course and a variety of equipment and services for Lexington Park, Acorn Park, Howard Johnson Park, and the Harriet Alexander Nature Center. Item 10C adopts a resolution awarding the 2025 pavement management project to North Valley Incorporated in the amount of $1,248,915.19. Item 10D adopts a resolution declaring the cost to be assessed for the County Road B reconstruction project and to call for a public hearing on June 2nd. Item 10E approves a resolution renewing the Master Joint Powers Agreement between the city and the state of Minnesota to allow the city to continue to access court records through the Minnesota Court Information System. And finally, agenda item 10F approves an agreement with Bridgewater College to allow their paramedic students to do a ride-along with the Roseville Fire to meet the required clinical hours as part of their degree and to gain experience. And this is a 5-year agreement, and that is the consent agenda.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Strawn, seconded by Councilmember Bauer. Discussion on that motion?
Nothing further.
Hearing none. Oh, Councilmember Bauer.
Is this an extension of the Ridgewater College paramedic contract, or is this something new?
This is something new. It's my understanding. This is the first time we've done it. I know other cities are doing the similar thing, but
It's a great way to recruit. I like it.
yes, yeah, everything we can do.
There we go. 2 purposes. All right. With that, we have the motion before us to adopt the consent agenda items or approve those. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Those items are approved or accepted. Mr. Trudgeon, the future agenda review.
Yeah, and note, there's just from your packet, some changes here, but so May 12th, next Monday, we have a regularly scheduled EDA meeting. We don't have any agenda items, so we'll officially cancel that. Right now, we have received presentation of the 2024 audit from our auditors for next Monday. Don't have much else on right now at this point, so we'll look to build that agenda a little bit more in the next couple days. On the 19th, we do have a couple of proclamations as noted. We also have the public hearing for certification of unpaid utility bills. And we unfortunately have some alcohol and tobacco compliance failures. As you can see, several of them are first time, but several of them are also second-time violators. So we'll go through all that. We've been through that many times before, so we'll go through that. On June 2nd, we have a couple things. We'll consider the ethics complaint filed against Councilmember Strawn. We'll have the County Road B assessment hearing, and also receive the report from BKV regarding the Civic Campus Master Plan. Originally, that was thought to be maybe the 19th, but giving some absences. I just want to make sure everybody's here at the same time hearing that. So we'll move that to June 2nd. And then on June 16th, among other things, we'll have the consideration of the Aldine right-of-way vacation, bring that back for some final determination. You can see the meetings we have in July, and we don't have them totally populated yet as far as agenda items, but we'll fill up, I'm sure.
question, will we get the audit before the meeting, so we can go through that before the presentation?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up. I think we should be able to get that out in the next day or so.
I was just going to say, even before the packet, I
Yeah,
think is
yeah.
what you were
Yes,
asking.
I would
Yes,
love it
okay.
more
Yeah,
than a
absolutely.
couple, I'd like more than 2 days if
Yeah,
possible.
100%.
All right, Councilmember Bauer.
In what's the for me, because I'm not familiar being new, but the process with the audit in the finance commission is finance commission also receive a presentation or
Um,
review of the audit after?
I think they typically have, I'm trying to remember, I think they, at their last meeting they did. Don't quote me on that, but I think they brought that forward.
So they have the audit report, the 20
Yeah,
report.
right,
Thank
right,
you.
right. But we'll send that out directly to you so you just have that, so you don't have to dig
Would be
around.
good.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
You know, and if you need me to pick it up because it's big, I'd be happy to do it too.
Yeah, I think we have.
Can you pick up mine
electronic
too?
I could drop it off. I could pick everybody's up and just zoom around and drop it off.
I personally, electronic would be just fine.
Same.
Yeah,
I
All
like
right.
to put sticky notes.
sure.
on mine.
Anything else related to questions or feedback on the future agenda review or any future agenda items that council members would like to initiate for future meetings? Any reports, communications, or announcements from council members?
Remember your May 14th luncheon date?
Ah, yes.
NYSF.
Wait, we have to bring a date?
Yes.
Oh, no, the date of the event. Okay, got it, okay.
Yes.
And Community in Bloom is this Saturday, the
Yeah.
10th, from noon to 2 p.m. At the McCarran's County Regional Park off of Rice Street in southeast Roseville. It should be a great event. It looks like the weather gods are cooperating for a nice event there. There'll be kids fishing off the pier. There'll be lots of barbecue and other food and good fellowship. So
And what
great
are the
opportunity to get a
times?
good sunburn.
Do you know what the times are?
12 to 2.
12 to 2.
Yep. All right. With that, there being no further business before the city council this evening, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Strawn to adjourn. No discussion on motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye opposed. That passes unanimously, and we are adjourned at 7:46 PM. Thank you.